Good afternoon, everybody. It's Mad Mystic 007. It's September 23rd, 2025 for 5 p.m. How's everybody doing? I'm going to make this stream as to the point I can. All right. So I've been covering for the last 5 years the entanglements of the JonBenet Ramsey murder because these people came to my channels and they started exposing things. And we can talk about what happened about, what was it? It's 25 now. Like 4 years ago, this woman called Bang Bang, that's not her real name, but her channel name, I have it recorded on my other channels, Truth or Tube and Board Queen 777. She came to my channel exposing me or asking me, why am I sharing Monograph's videos? And I said, what do you mean? And she said, don't you know Monograph made Little Piggy Umbrella Man? And I was like, what are you talking about? And so they brought me Little Piggy Umbrella Man, right? Let me pull it up. So they brought me Little Piggy. And she's like, yeah, Monograph made this video about this girl being chained up and tortured. I'm like, what? So yeah, this. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And then she decides to tell me that she dated John Ramsey, JonBenet Ramsey's father. And I was like, you what? And she had this kitty cat bar down in Dominican Republic with her boyfriend. Because her ex-husband, her ex-husband had died of like a cancer, and she, with her divorce money and things, she met this guy, tattoo artist from Indiana, and he decided to get her into this kitty cat bar in the Dominican Republic. And she sent me pictures and things of this kitty cat bar, and things started getting really heavy for her because she was coming on my channels and telling me all this. And so I just want to say that there's a lot of coincidences in my journalism with all this. So let's take it now to Little Piggy Umbrella. This is the movie, Monograph. So in this video, we're just going to be doing a lot of, I'm doing research while I'm doing it, okay? Okay, sorry, I'm just looking at that. How do I go back? Why did that take me to this? What is this? So, like I said, we're doing research while I'm doing research. Because I'm finding all kinds of things. And what triggered this video today is Sean Atwood's video. Yeah. Because they're talking about, I had no idea. See, nobody told me when they got me into all this. And Randy took me by the JonBenet Ramsey house and, you know, all these things. And I had to go to the FBI and all this stuff. Nobody told me that a lot. Nobody tells me anything. So I'm finding out things today. Like, so Ghislaine Maxwell was in JonBenet Ramsey's pageants videos. Pageant. They're saying that she was in one of her pageant videos. And I was like, what? How could that be? How could that be? You've got to be kidding me. I want this thing to blow up. It won't let me. I'm like trying to do this and it won't let me. Oh, I thought it was a blow it up. I can't see this shit. So these are the flight logs, huh? Okay. I'm just curious. A hell of a lot of people. Um, good. That's good to know. So, these are the old flight logs, huh? Dr. Henry A. Kissinger. Imagine that. David Koch. Okay. So this is not to do with my video, but okay, so I found this. Okay. So I found that by clicking this runner-up guy who published this monograph video. Okay. So let's go back. So this is who put this monograph video up. And I clicked that and it went to the Epstein list. Isn't that crazy? Like, this is what come up when I clicked his name. Like, what is this? I'm just curious. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Old school YouTube conspiracy channel that ran from 2010 to 2013. Wow, I want to play this video. Wait, get rid of this shit. How long is this? Here we go. Whoa, whoa. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, here we go.
The government now believes roughly 8 million children have come down with the virus. In addition to the 540 who have died, 36,000 have been hospitalized. Among adults 18 to 64, there were an estimated 12 million cases.
Is fatal in 60% of human
So for over a decade now, the world has wondered what happened to JonBenet Ramsey. She was a child star and the daughter of JonBenet Ramsey, and she was murdered in '96. If you keep up with current events and news and things, then I'm sure you know who this person is. But just in case you don't. This is Jeffrey Epstein, and if you look at this bottom line right here, it says that he was charged for using underage girls for sex trafficking or sexually abusing them. Here's the actual listing of criminal charges for procuring an underage girl for prostitution or sex trafficking. Long story short, he's trash. This is a picture of him with his most current girlfriend. Why is she important, you might ask yourself? Well, right here it says that she was also accused of helping Epstein with procuring and trafficking underage girls. She denies these allegations, but still it's there. The picture I'm about to show you was taken of JonBenet shortly before she died. Notice someone?
Did you know 80% of women are struggling with hair damage? Just like I was.
Pantene Miracle Rescue Deep Conditioner with Melting Pro V Pearls.
Locks in moisture to repair 6 months of damage for resilient, healthy looking hair. If you know it's Pantene.
Adobe Acrobat Studio is all new. What can PDF spaces with AI do? Do your marketing needs in one spot. An AI assistant? Show me what you got. AI breakdowns on trend reports. Unlock key insights on the rise of shorts. Do quick summaries, show me what to read. AI, give me just the numbers, please. Do a recap of all your learning. Add an AI graphic of potential earnings. Ideate, generate, do it all in one. Do that, doing that, did that, done. Now you can do that with Acrobat. Now you can do that with the all-new Acrobat.
looked amazing after I got ready. I had so much fun at the pageant.
She's been competing since she was 2.
As soon as she did her first national pageant, she was just winning everything. She was just a performer.
I was meant to be one.
This is some sick shit, guys. Sorry, I didn't know my microphone was muted. Yeah, we're gonna shout out to Brain and Beyond. This is a YouTube channel. This video I'm featuring. My mind's blown. I don't know why that last video didn't show the FBI account, but that's what I was looking for. Obviously, it wasn't there. This is some sick shit. So, as a parent, I've witnessed these dance moms, these gymnastic moms, figure skating moms. They all get very competitive and they use their children as pawns. And I've seen it. I've witnessed it. And people ask me, why didn't I do that as a parent? Because I'm wide awake. Okay. So the thing is that this is really wild. But these parents that do this, they're living vicariously through their children. But in these circumstances with sickos like parents that like to over-sexualize their children, and it's there's a reason for it. And these people were deranged. They're not. Nobody has no clue. I don't think people have any clue what the Ramseys were involved in. And I'm gonna play a video not far after this one. It's gonna explain. I've already explained this on my channel for years now, but this has these ties. And the ties that are going on, and it goes back to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. You guys, when I heard that, I was just like, wait a minute, what? Because nothing of that was ever, I never put those connections to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell to little JonBenet Ramsey and her parents. And their ties to, so much. We're going to play that video up next. Now, this house here, you see how that house, that house, I've been there. Yeah, I've been there to look at it when I was in Colorado. Because I covered the JonBenet Ramsey case, and Randy, the YouTuber that came for me and I dated in Colorado, he's the one that drove me by there. Yeah.
She was just a performer.
I was meant to be one.
That's her first. This is a pageant she did. And it was called Cowboy's Sweetheart. And that really touched my heart. Because I was like, really? Wow. Because my daughter's figure skating coach, my daughter's first competition, she won all gold medals. Cowboy Sweetheart. Yes. And I was just like, wow. Because, I'm a mother trying to expose all this. I'm trying to save the children of the world and expose what's going on. And it's incredible, the coincidences and the things that are going on in this world. It really is. So this house, this view that they give it, it doesn't really look like it. It looks like this house. Because I was there last year. Was it last year? Yeah. So I was there last spring, and this house doesn't look quite like it does to me, like they show it. It is tucked back there. They're all the houses are pretty close together, but the thing is this is kind of tucked back with all the trees. It looks like a little hobbity like house kind of. But the back, I drove in the back side of the house on the next street, like the backyard and things. It's wild. Like the backyard, the back of that house is wild. And it's just a very creepy area. Like those houses look like there's basements that are connecting to each other. Like this is a creep. I didn't like it whatsoever. Yeah. Yeah, creepy vibes for sure. I wanted a ghost hunt there. If I would have stayed in Colorado, yeah, I would have wanted to contact the owners, but the owners, like, people keep flipping that house. People don't stay in there that long, I think. And I would like to be a ghost hunter in that house. I sure would.
Hi, I'm Jo Bailey, forensic trained clinical psychologist, and this is part 3 of my JonBenet Ramsey series. If you haven't seen part 1 or part 2, I will link them in the description section below, but you don't have to watch these in order.
See, ghost hunting, it's not like it's not like something you go in and you're going to get something right away. You have to spend time, and you have to talk, you have to have a connection with the spirits and things. So I would need a good week in that house. And I bet I could get lots of information from the other side.
If you've just stumbled across this video, you can pick up here. The only continuity that would be missing is that at the end of part 2, I speak about my conclusion, who I think did this. It is not the parents, not a very popular decision with some.
Okay. The parents are involved. Okay, the parents are involved. It's not the parents, but the parents are involved. And her conclusion is that she's going to bring up these 2 men, criminals in the area. But I want everybody to listen to it because it's important what her message is her message in this video is very important. And it's important for all parents.
People and people are very passionate about this, as am I, but the truth is none of us really know. So I am speculating as much as anyone, but I concluded that it wasn't the parents, that this crime was done by an intruder, possibly 2 men, and I put forth some evidence, some reasoning why it could be 2 men. So this video is going to pick up from there. I'm going to look at 2 men, the criminal profile of these 2 men who represent a bunch of other perverted men, depraved minds such as them. In fact, there were 38 registered sex offenders, sexual predators living in the very area that JonBenet resided at the time of her death. So these profiles could be of anyone, but these 2 men, Gary Oliva and Michael Helgoth. Now, I know at times I mispronounce their names. The truth is these guys are the scum of the earth, so I really don't care if I mispronounce their names. You know who I'm talking about. So I'm going to look at their criminal profiles, and I'm going to look at the broader problem of these child beauty pageants and ask the very specific question, would JonBenet Ramsey still be alive if not for her participation in these pageants? So let's start with Gary Oliva. He was a known sexual offender. He was a pervert, and he had a history of violence. I believe at one point I read somewhere, maybe you can help me out on this, but he had an attempt of strangling his own mother. I haven't looked into that, but I did read that somewhere. Point is, he has a history of violence, and he has this tendency to be excited by looking at little girls. And he did have a fascination with JonBenet. We know right after the murder, he contacted his high school friend, Michael Vale, and he was reportedly distraught on the phone to Michael, crying and sobbing and confessing that he had done something terrible, that he had hurt a little girl. Gary was busted in 2016 with 695 images of child pornography. And
that is incredible. I am witnessing so much horrific videos that I'm watching of these child predators, and they're being caught on camera. And when they're exposed, the amount of child pornography that these pedophiles have is incredible. My mind is blown. My mind is truly blown by how many sexual deviant pedophiles there are in this world, and their collection of photographs and videos and their deviancy. It's mind blowing.
335 of those related to JonBenet. He was convicted of these offences and he spent 8 years in prison. And during his time...
Wait a minute. He had photos of JonBenet? 335 of them related to her. Wow.
Bonet. He was convicted of these offences and he spent 8 years in prison. And during his time in prison, he wrote a letter to his...
8 years?
Same high school friend, Michael Vale. And in this letter, he wrote, "I never loved anyone like I did JonBenet.
They let this guy back out on the streets.
And yet I let her slip and her head bashed in half and I watched her die. Police treated this as a confession of sorts and investigated him. His DNA was not found at the crime scene. We know there was foreign DNA, another person's DNA. In fact, I believe there was 2 foreign DNAs found at the crime scene. But ultimately, Gary was ruled out as a suspect. Now, whilst Gary's written confession was never substantiated by the police, it does align with a criminal profile. A profile that to me would suggest he is a schizophrenic with perverse and violent pedophilic tendencies. Yeah. Gary served his time in prison and he was released last year in 2024. Now, I believe he has to check in with Denver police as part of his parole conditions once a month. Again, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure I read that it's just a once a month check-in. Now, what this means is in between those check-ins, he's transient. No one really knows where he is. Yes, he's meant to have a stable address, but I also heard that the place he was residing in, his registered address, he hadn't shown for a while. Look, I don't know what's happening there. This is not the point of the video, but it is so concerning to me that people like this can just wander amongst us. It's not like 8 years in prison will just change these people. They need to be monitored, and they
need to have a tracking device on them.
Need to be watched. And aside from these monthly police check-ins as part of his parole, he's free to do what he wants. That's a very frightening thought. And then there is the second man that I have referenced, Michael Helgott.
I personally think he needs to be tracked. All his internet activity needs to be monitored. All these pedophiles that are released out of prison with being charged with their pedophilic tendencies, they need to be tracked, and all their social media and any internet activities need to be monitored at all times for the rest of their life.
Who also had a bit of a fascination with young girls. Well, maybe not a bit, a lot of a fascination. But he also had a fascination with this morbid, sadistic element. He spoke to a workmate, I believe, about crushing a human skull, what that would be like. And we know that JonBenet's head was hit with a blunt force object, so much so and caused intracranial hemorrhage. Now, JonBenet would have died of that head injury, or she would have died of the strangulation. I know, to digress a little, there's been a bit of argument about what happened first. The autopsy said they happened almost simultaneously. Some people think the intracranial injury happened first, or others think the strangulation. It really is semantics at this point. Either injury would have killed her, but there is the possibility that maybe 2 people were involved. Maybe one strangled her whilst the other hit her. I don't know, but these are possibilities. Michael was implicated in the case after someone had alerted police that just before JonBenet's murder, Michael had been talking about coming into a large sum of money around Christmas time. He also had a pair of the high-tech boots. The imprint was found at the crime scene, although the size did not match. He had a fascination with stun guns and owned a stun gun. There was a whole bunch of other things there with Michael that might have linked him. However, The FBI asked Boulder police to put out a public announcement that they were honing in on the perpetrator. And soon after that announcement went out, Michael Helgoff was found dead. There's curious situation around his death, and it's a very suspicious death. It's also possible that he was murdered. It's, in fact, perhaps more than likely he was murdered. And I question, if there were two men and the police were honing in, did Michael panic? Did the other perpetrator get scared that Michael was going to confess or slip up and murder him? I don't know, and it's not really the purpose of this video, but these are the things that we have to consider. And however he died, we know it was in suspicious circumstances. And whilst no police evidence links Helgoff to JonBenet's crime either, his criminal profile, which is a combination of sadism and opportunistic criminality, makes him, in my opinion, a very compelling suspect. So both Gary and Michael had similar perverse interests, and I don't know if they knew each other. I think it would be really intriguing to investigate that more. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. People like this are known to operate in rings, to have underground communities, and to share images with each other. And given they were in very close proximity to each other, it's not a long bow to draw to think maybe there was some connection. Maybe they knew each other. I don't know if that has been explored or investigated, but it...
Okay, now I want to bring up this. Okay, hold up, because this has got me bothered. Okay, when I have been exposing this thread on kiwifarms.net, and you got people like Monograph, who's made lots of, you know, he made Little Piggy Umbrella Man, and he has a website, you know, Monograph here. You know, Monty. Well, when he has websites, and he claims this is not him, but he has montography and all that, and this type of shit. He's got all this fucking shit on top of Little Piggy Umbrella Man, and he's got his fucking montography site here. You're talking about these underground rings. He's from Denver. He was off of Colfax Avenue, near there. The same time that the JonBenet Ramsey murder happened, this clown right here doing all the, you know, all kinds of shit, weird fucking shit. You have to ask yourself, what the fuck is going on here? Yeah. You guys brought this to my fucking attention, so I'm asking questions. So Monograph puts this ad out. You know, and we got somebody deviant like this making part 1, 2, 3 of fucking Little Piggy Umbrella Man. And then, oh, Umbrella Man returns, and it's another video of a woman being tortured, chained up, dead live bugs, you know, like, what's going on here? So let's go back to her video. Hold on, where did that go?
Something I'll probably go and look into after this video, because to me it is pretty important to know. But there is something I need to digress with here briefly, because I can't make sense of it. There was a second assault on another little girl who was referred to as Amy. I believe it's a pseudonym. It was not her real name, but it's Amy's case. Now, her assault happened just 9 months after the JonBenet Ramsey case. And it is so similar. The MO, everything about it is so similar that it's really hard to just wipe it off as a coincidence. Amy went to the same dance school as JonBenet. The intruder snuck into Amy's family home whilst they were out. When the mother came home with Amy, she says that she put on the security code of the house, and no one came in after that. So they had to have snuck in before they got home, which means the intruder lay in wait for several hours. Does this sound familiar? This is something a lot of people argue with the intruder theory, because they say the intruder would not have been able to have time to write the note or look around the house. Well, they would have if they were in the house for several hours whilst the Ramseys were out.
Circumstances were very similar. I believe that that creature came into our home when we were gone. They had gone out, come back, set the burglar alarm, and gone to bed. So obviously he was in the house when they got home. And that's what I believe happened in our case.
So in this case, it's very, very similar. And the only difference here is that Amy's mother heard some noise and came into the bedroom and interrupted the assault. The intruder fled out the window over a balcony and was not caught. Now, the police coincidentally bungled this investigation also. Important DNA was discarded. I believe it was the bed sheets. Other DNA wasn't tested. Now, I do have some graphic information which I can't put into this video, but there was an opportunity to get some form of fluid DNA. And I don't know why, but this did not happen. Amy's mother also wanted to do a sketch drawing or get the police to provide a sketch drawing of the intruder. But this didn't happen also. Now, I don't know why. This case seems, at the surface, so similar to JonBenet's case that could it be a coincidence? To me, this is just too much of a coincidence. It doesn't make sense. And the reason I mention it in this video is because Amy also was a child who went to a dance school. In fact, the dance school JonBenet and Amy went to had a balcony over the area where the little girls danced in their costumes. So basically, families, friends, or anyone for that matter could go up to the public balcony and watch the girls dance. I mean, it is possible that these perverted men were actually there watching from time to time. Scary. So that brings me directly to the elephant in the room, JonBenet's participation in child beauty pageants. Now, these events are so polarizing, and I imagine some people will not like what I have to say. Critics, and I am one of these critics, will say that these kind of pageants sexualize very young girls and attract the wrong kind of people, making them targets for sexual predators. Advocates, on the other hand, are going to defend these pageants and say it's great for self-esteem and the girls have fun. It's all very innocent and that it's just a few depraved minds that ruin it for everyone. Now, I wish I lived in a world that naive, that ignorant, that blissful. I really do. So maybe I've just worked in my line of work too long. Maybe I've been around too many criminals in too many prisons. That is highly possible. Maybe my sample and my worldview is skewed. But let's get real. From a forensic psychology point of view, a child beauty pageant is a pedophile's dream, and it's going to attract deviant-minded individuals with perverted tendencies. And we cannot get past that point. No matter how well-intended a parent is, no matter how innocent and playful the event is for the child, there will be a group of people that are attracted to these things for all the wrong reasons. And to me, that is a scary point. It's a point that I would not want to get past as a parent. So what I want to ask is, was the exposure of JonBenet in these pageants the element that inadvertently placed her in harm's way, placed her as a target for whoever did this to her, assuming it wasn't an intruder? If not for her participation in these events, would JonBenet still be alive?
No, it was nothing to do with her pageants. It has to do with her parents and their involvement and their entanglement and their ties. And I'm about to show you in the next video.
And I guess a secondary question is, where does responsibility lie? Do parents, or should parents, be held somewhat accountable, albeit for innocent actions, but negligence that ends in tragedy because of the perverse mind of others? I mean, I don't hold that view, but where does the accountability lie? Is it more of a social responsibility? Should these child beauty pageants be allowed to happen at all? Should they be banned? Or does responsibility lie solely with the hands of those who commit these crimes? Should responsibility be shared? I guess it's an important question to ask, because if these pageants do attract, albeit a very small portion of deviant individuals, We have to take responsibility as a society and decide, what do we do about it? Is it okay to say, well, it only happens once or twice here and there, therefore it's all right? Or do we take a bit more ownership of this, take more accountability and say we're going to protect our children from this? We're not going to participate in these events anymore. As a forensic psychologist, I have studied the behavioural patterns of these kind of individuals. I've worked with these kind of individuals, people who target children, and they often have a very complex, tragic story of their own. We know that a lot of the times these people were also abused as children, but that's no excuse, and we have to stop the pattern. Pedophiles will often exhibit patterns of seeking access to children in environments where they can observe them undetected. Just like I mentioned with the dance school where JonBenet and Amy went, there was a public area for viewing the children. This would be a really prime example of a place where a pedophile might be able to slip in, view children undetected. These kind of things have to be monitored more, surely. I think regardless of the motivations of normal parents, we can't deny that beauty pageants provide such prime opportunities for the depraved. And
Wait a minute, there's viewing areas for people just to come in and watch beauty pageants? Wait, what? Because why would I've never been at a dance studio or any place or gymnastics or anything like that there's like a viewing area, like where just random people can walk off the streets and watch your children performing or practicing their sports, or wait, just random people come and watch beauty pageants off the streets? That's weird. This is so strange to me.
Regardless of the motivations of normal parents, we can't deny that beauty pageants provide such prime opportunities for the depraved. And I look at some of these videos and my mind is blown. As a mother myself, I don't understand it, but I was never the pretty girl at school either. Trying to be a beauty queen was never my goal in life. I was the bucky-toothed, freckled girl with glasses that didn't have a lot of friends. I was the nerd. And for me, it's very hard to understand the motives and that desire to be so popular, to be so beautiful. And I think society pushes this message so heavily for women. If you look at magazines, if you look at advertising anywhere.
Yes, not just society heavily pushes this, but this YouTube community that I've been working in the Penalverse, one of the main targets that they do is they target your personal appearance and things about you. That's the soft targets they go for. So it's about how everybody looks. It's like, that's why I came on YouTube with my face and my camera off, showing everybody who I am, because it's not about that. But these people love to pick on your appearance because they think that that's what the world revolves around. However, it doesn't.
Women have to be beautiful. They have to be perfect. And this ideal needs to be broken as well. But from a psychological point of view, I know how dangerous and sinister that desire for attention, the desire to be noticed for beauty can be. None more so than when the person receiving the attention, in this case from grown, sick, twisted men, is a mere 6 years of age. I am glad I didn't grow up wanting that or knowing that. And it hurts my brain to understand what you gain from that. Surely our moral values, our character, the quality of our heart needs to be put forth over and above this desire for beauty and attention. And it scares me that potentially these beauty pageants not only attract perverted men, but also set up these unrealistic ideals for children from a very young and early age. And the scariest thing of all is that you don't know who these people are. You don't know who these perverted minds are. Now, Gary and Michael, yes, they probably would stand out in a crowd. They look a bit creepy. You'd probably take a second look at them if you walk past them. But not all pedophiles look like this. Pedophiles often exhibit traits such as charm, social status, and crafty manipulation to gain trust. Through my work, I can assure you not all pedophiles look like Gary or look scary. Some have uniforms, some have badges, and some are in very high, influential positions of power. And if you think it can't get any scarier than that, well, trust me, it does. When these powerful people who are involved in this vile and abhorrent scene are able to not only manipulate parents and children, but can manipulate systems and processes, it gets very scary and it gets very sinister and very dark quickly. Now, I'm not saying that is what happened in the JonBenet Ramsey case or the Amy case. I did watch a documentary that exposed some seedy underground activity in Boulder around the time of JonBenet's death. And with all I know, all I can do is ask, what if? So would JonBenet Ramsey still be alive if not for her participation in these pageants? Well, look, her participation in these beauty pageants undeniably placed her in the spotlight, making her known to people beyond her family and community. And that raises the chilling question, did this visibility make her a target? Would she still be alive if not for her participation in these pageants? Well, obviously, this is a hypothetical question that no one can answer, but you have to wonder. And this is not to blame the parents. No one ever is to blame for a crime, except the person with the evil intent that committed the crime themselves. But we have to be aware and we have to get honest. And I think as a community, we have to take some responsibility, each and every one of us. And we have to consider the possibility that JonBenet's participation in these pageants could have raised attention from the wrong people. We have to consider that many of JonBenet's photos and videos, her very adult-like photos and videos, were already circulating and out there before her murder. We have to consider that both Gary and Michael have profiles of individuals that are drawn to pageant world, but their exact connection to JonBenet Ramsey's case remains speculative. I get that. But we also know that the media frenzy surrounding her death was fueled in part by her pageant photos, and these images that were meant to capture her talent and her charisma and her innocence were weaponized to sensationalize her case. And that raises the broader question about the role of media and societal values in cases like this. JonBenet's murder is a tragic reminder how innocence can be exploited in the most horrible of ways. And whilst we certainly can't say the pageant was the thing that caused her death, we have to acknowledge the risks that are associated with thrusting young girls into the spotlight, into the public eye. And we have to ask, is this really worth it? JonBenet Ramsey's murder and Amy's assault remain unsolved, but they remain as stark reminders of the vulnerabilities that children in the public eye, in the spotlight, will face. And this is the reason I've made this video, not only to seek justice for JonBenet Ramsey and for Amy, but to hopefully protect other children from similar tragedies. It has to start with awareness and it has to start with discussion. We have to continue this conversation. What do you think? Are you someone who advocates for these child beauty pageants, or are you a critic like me who thinks the risk is just too high and not worth it? Well, this is the end of the 3 parts that I had prepared for this series, but I don't think I'm done. The case has got me losing sleep. I got invested in this a lot more than I thought I would, and I spent a lot more time in it than I thought I would. I mean, there's just so much information, so much detail. And if I've got little things wrong along the way, I apologize. It was never my intention. As you would know, you can just be bombarded with information. Everyone has an opinion, and these videos are all my opinion. That's all they are. I'm speculating as much as anyone in this case. I probably will go back and look at this a little bit more. I may make a video again down the track, probably around Amy, but I also didn't really get too pulled into some of the other friends. I looked briefly at Santa, Fleet White, the housekeeper. A lot of these people have been ruled out, so I really didn't bring them into my series at all, but maybe I'll go and have a look a bit further. I think wherever you look, there's some kind of suspicious element, and I think that is the fascinating thing with this case. No matter what point of view you take, there's something that you can look at a little bit more, or there's something that leaves you just curious and wanting to know what happened. So maybe I will return to this, but for now, I have some other projects and works that will take up my time, and I do hope you'll join me for those also. But until then, take care of yourselves and each other, and have a very happy and peace-filled day. Bye.
Okay, so this was a great video. In fact, I want to find her channel. Why can't... Let me see. I gotta go subscribe. Great video, Brain and Beyond. See, wow. So she did... Let's see her latest videos. So 8 months ago. So she did another video. Patsy's dead, though. Patsy's not alive anymore. Unfortunately, I mean, so that is not a question. Well, I mean, she could have been. I believe she's involved, definitely. Okay, so now let's go to this video. Now, I've featured this video many times because it's a very important video. This is by the channel that I watch every day, and I tell you guys, this is a channel that I watch at night when I go to bed. And if you haven't seen this video, this channel, I suggest you check it out, because there's so many accounts of things that you wouldn't believe that's going on in this world. And it will open your mind. Okay, here we go. So, satanic billionaire murder.
Was JonBenet Ramsey's murder linked to creepy satanic billionaires? If you have ever gone down the JBR rabbit hole, you know that it's one of the most confounding unsolved mysteries in history. Nothing about this case really adds up, and one piece of evidence will contradict any given theory you can come up with, no matter who you think was involved. Quick recap. There are basically 4 possible outcomes. Intruder did it. Someone broke into the Ramsey house, planned to kidnap JonBenet. Something went awry, and they ended up having to kill her and flee, but not before writing a detailed 3-page ransom note. John Ramsey did it. The autopsy revealed that there had been an ongoing molestation of JB, providing a possible motive for John killing her before the secret got out. This would require his wife Patsy to go along with the staged kidnapping for the rest of her life, despite John being a monster. Patsy did it. Possible motive. JB had been wetting the bed, and with the stress of the holidays, travel, and tight scheduling, Patsy snapped that night and disciplined JB too harshly and finished the cover-up by strangling her and staging a kidnapping. Burke did it. Circumstantial evidence makes this seem likely, but the injuries sustained to JB's body seem to require a lot more strength than a 9-year-old will be capable of. Now, after looking into this case a lot, it seemed like an endless riddle, with dead ends cropping up everywhere, and new pieces of information raising more questions than it can answer. I have an alternate theory that can only be discussed in a place like this, so bear with me. Now, John Ramsey was a very wealthy man. He was the CEO of a company that had, around the time of the incident, been valued at over $1 billion. His company, Access Graphics, was soon to be acquired by Lockheed Martin. John undoubtedly had connections in high places, was speculated to be a heavy donor to the Boulder Police Department, and had political aspirations. John and Patsy Ramsey were active and well-known members of their community. Quick side note, The JBR case has some eerie similarities to another case of a missing young girl, Madeleine McCann, a blonde girl around the same age who went missing. Another alleged kidnapping in which the parents were heavily scrutinized in the wake of her disappearance. Now, many years later, attention gets drawn back to the case in the wake of the arrest of Jeffrey Epstein and the Petergate scandal. The police sketches of the suspected kidnappers get released, and bear a striking resemblance to John and Tony Podesta, the two men being seen together, and at times being seen colluding with someone who looks a lot like Ghislaine Maxwell. Pick related, the police sketches of the alleged kidnappers compared to the Podestas. Back to JBR. One theory that I have never seen pointed out is that there was a third party, but that they did not force themselves in. They were let in and out. I guess this is only a hunch, but I suspect it's possible that because GDI, PDI, and BDI all have some fundamental issue when it comes to conflicting evidence, that there is some likelihood that there will be another explanation, especially if the IDI theory doesn't hold water, due to the fact that there were no signs of forced entry, other than a broken window, which had undisturbed cobwebs and other debris. My theory is that, given that JBR was a pageant girl, and the daughter of someone who is essentially a billionaire, that she attracted the attention of rich and powerful elite pedophiles. John Ramsey, who, make no mistake, is probably a sick bastard himself, essentially let other men use his daughter to gain favor. My guess is one of them had some kind of strangulation fetish and just went too far, and she had to be killed because there were visible abrasions to her neck and body. Then, the killer was allowed to walk, and whether the body was later discovered or not, the Ramseys needed to cover up the crime to protect their powerful friends and themselves. A person they were seen with, compared to Ghislaine Maxwell, a popular internet theory that arose from this case after the scandal was that the parents sold their daughter, McCann, into slavery. A few factors. Once the sheriff, who knew the family, made the choice to help cover it up, he had to keep covering for them, because you can't just stop obstructing justice in a high-profile case without anyone noticing. At best, your career in law enforcement is over. At worst, you go to prison for obstruction. By performing a cover-up, the police had already tainted all the evidence. An outside prosecutor, state police or FBI, would have had to arrest a lot of people, many of them cops, and prosecuted them all under RICO. That's an extremely difficult and expensive prosecution, with a high chance of failure. If the case is that high profile and you don't win, you're disgraced. Chances are good you wouldn't even gather enough evidence for the initial arrest warrants. If you beat the odds and win, you've made a lot of enemies in law enforcement and put a child in jail for decades. The big mystery may be interesting to the public, but it's third rail for a career prosecutor. The pathologist found signs of repeated, but not extensive, sexual abuse. There was no evidence of forced intercourse with an adult. Nah, a scenario involving an eyes wide shut cult is just wild speculation with no real evidence for it. Nope. The father found the body, then faked the note to cover for his son. The note was also written with materials found inside the home. The sheriff saw through it pretty quickly, so the father begged his friend to help him. The sheriff made a bad decision, which he found himself stuck with, because now he was complicit. He could have come out a week later and said, "Look, I helped my buddy cover for his kid, but this has gotten out of hand," and then justice might have been served. But it would have been the end of his career, his friend's career, both their families, etc. There could have been better ways to shield the kid from severe consequences up front, but the awful nature of the crime had everyone panicked and led to bad choices early on. Holy shit, I didn't realize she was killed on Christmas night. More info on Lockheed Martin and their interference with the case. So that there is no confusion, I want to say here and insert that I do not think that Lockheed Martin was involved in the actual crime/death of JonBenet Ramsey. John Ramsey was the president of a company owned by Lockheed Martin. I have held much lesser positions than this for a company that does government military defense contract work, and this is unlike working at a typical corporation. The security measures and concerns are far greater. Additionally, Lockheed Martin was trying to sell Access Graphics in a fairly significant deal with GE at the time. So, Wouldn't it be reasonable to think that maybe Lockheed Martin would want to immediately know about this fairly important issue of a missing child in ransom note found at the home of Access Graphics president? John Ramsey isn't just a father waking up on December 26, 1966 to these events. He isn't just a businessman waking up to these events. He is someone who is the president of a company owned by Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin, who is so mammoth in size, money, power, weapons, technology, secrecy. They are directly connected to the federal government of the United States and are the biggest arms dealer of the world. They are ranked 6th for lobbying spending and have been criticized for their influence in major political decisions. They ranked as one of only a few major military defense contractors. Getting back to my point though, John Ramsey heard Patsy scream, and while some of the details of what followed are somewhat debatable, the consensus seems to be that Patsy informs John Ramsey of the ransom note that she has found. They do a brief search for JonBenet and don't find her. John then tells Patsy to call 911 while he reads the note. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We do respect your business, but not the country that it serves. Make sure that you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. Any deviations of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied her remains for proper burial. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. You and your family are under constant security as well as the authorities. You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. I pulled out anything that I thought might immediately stand out to someone like John Ramsey for him to think maybe he should contact Lockheed Martin about this incident. Even if this ransom note was immediately considered a hoax by John Ramsey, it's reasonable to assume that Lockheed Martin would most certainly still want to be informed immediately and want to make sure of that themselves. So, my initial questions are, why doesn't John read the note before instructing Patsy to call 911? Shouldn't he at least review the contents of the note to get a better sense of things? Is it possible that once reading the note, that John realized this was possibly more concerning than he initially considered it to be, and possibly had second thoughts about Patsy calling 911? Maybe he hung up on 911. Maybe he thought he should call Lockheed Martin first. I'm not saying this is what happened, just a consideration. I understand why John wouldn't want to mention ever calling Lockheed Martin. Possibly, he isn't allowed to mention any details concerning them, their protocols in such an event, or their involvement in this regard. However, why doesn't anyone else seem to discuss it? Further, the Boulder Police Department and Ron Walker with the FBI also doesn't seem to mention John talking to Lockheed Martin, or any of themselves sensing any need to contact Lockheed Martin about this matter. That seems unusual to me, but maybe they also aren't inclined to speak publicly about this. For years with this case, some things have just nagged me. Why are there so many people acting in manners that seem out of the norm, to put it mildly? Why is the entire Boulder Police Department not following procedures? I've traced it as far back as John Eller being responsible. However, does it really stop at him? Why is the entire BPD blamed when really it's John Eller's fault? Why is the BPD's reason for this given as short-staffed, inexperienced, etc., when in reality, there was someone present who had training at Quantica, knew what they were talking about, and was suggesting correct procedures on the 26th of December, 1996 that would have avoided nearly every mistake made in the case. However, Larry Mason was ignored by John Eller, who continued to issue commands that broke procedure. John Eller found an excuse to remove Larry Mason from the case early on, which Larry Mason fired back with a suit against the BPD for this and won. Why isn't the FBI intervening in this case, even as they see the Lockheed Martin connection, and watch local law enforcement screw things up? Why is the DA bending over backwards for the Ramseys in manners that aren't typical? I mean, I get that the Ramseys were wealthy, but come on, were they that important? How are the Ramseys able to get a Washington, D.C. crisis manager and ex-FBI profiler John Douglas on their case? Not just anyone can call these people up and request their services. In fact, I've never heard of John Douglas providing these types of services to anyone else beside the Ramseys. So many times in this case I would wonder, What made the Ramseys so important that I would ever see such things happen, and such big shot names? Then I stumbled across this article. In it, Fleet White mentions this. 1. That he thought that the grand jury had been delayed to protect Lockheed Martin's financial interests while trying to sell Access Graphics. As the Whites saw it, various entities connected to the case had strong reasons for delaying a grand jury investigation. Hunter, whose office rarely went to trial on homicide cases, was just one. Lockheed Martin, one of the state's largest employers, was another. The company had been attempting to sell Access Graphics at the time JonBenet was killed. Any risk that the company's top executives would be facing a possible indictment would not have helped the divestment plans. Lockheed Martin sold Access Graphics, an asset reportedly valued at around $200 million, to General Electric in late 1997. The grand jury began hearing evidence in the Ramsey case in September 1998. 2. Attorneys who had connections with Lockheed Martin and the Ramseys' chosen legal firm offered pro bono services to the Boulder Police Department. As the feud with the DA's office escalated, the Boulder Police accepted the aid of a dream team of free attorneys who offered to provide pro bono counsel in this case. Curiously, one of the attorneys had served as outside counsel to Lockheed Martin in several cases. The second belonged to a firm that had also represented the company. The third had been co-counsel with Hal Haddon, John Ramsey's criminal attorney, in another matter. The Whites met with members of this dream team, who said they were in favor of a grand jury, but they didn't seem to be in any particular hurry to get one. 3. That Colorado changed the laws concerning grand juries during this case. They had learned that an obscure new law, pushed by the Colorado District Attorney's Council in 1997, allowed a grand jury to issue reports in first-degree murder cases in which an indictment was not returned. The reports could even include a public exoneration of the unindicted, but the new law would only apply to juries convened after October 1997. People interested in obtaining a public absolution of the Ramseys would have to get the matter before a jury seated after that date. Denver District Attorney Bill Ritter, who had been involved in drafting the new law and was also on a team of district attorneys advising Hunter, denied that the legislation had been written with the Ramsey case in mind, but there was little question that a grand jury investigation had been repeatedly delayed by backstage maneuvers, as well as a series of much below-age summits of experts and formal presentations of evidence. What the Whites describe as well-publicized but clumsy attempts by the district attorney and police leadership to look busy. 4. That the intention of convening the grand jury was actually to seal away facts, evidence, and such. The people running the investigation had long ago decided against filing charges in the case, the Whites wrote. Their motivation for presenting the case to a grand jury has little or nothing to do with obtaining new evidence, grilling reluctant witnesses, or returning an indictment, and everything to do with sealing away facts, circumstances, and evidence gathered in the investigation in a grand jury transcript. I can't help but to think that Fleet White was onto something here. What if Lockheed Martin was doing a lot more behind the scenes, trying to influence the things happening in this case, and helping the Ramseys? How else could someone explain all of this? More so, why don't more people discuss this possibility? Side comment, but look at the novel's instructions. Don't call the police, or we will kill her. What did they do? Call the police. There's the justification for her death. In our terror, we disobeyed the faction, and they did kill her. But if they were still inside the house, she would have been freshly dead, not stiff in rigor. Also, no kidnapper keeps the target inside their own home. You will be denied access to her remains. What do they do? Leave her dead body under the Christmas tree as they flee. The mention of being denied her remains and proper funeral are so interesting to me because, 1, it just seems like an odd thing for a criminal to bother with, thinking or mentioning. 2, the Ramseys would later make a huge fuss about the BPD trying to hold her body. The coroner arrived late on the 26th of December, 1996, and he did the autopsy on the 27th of December, 1996. The body then had to be flown to Atlanta, Georgia, in time for preparations for the viewing/funeral. This requires at least 2 days, paperwork, scheduling, transportation. So let's say 28th of the 12th, or 29th of the 12th. The body would arrive preferably at least a day in advance for preparations to take place, the let's say 30th of the 12th. JonBenet's body was present in Atlanta, Georgia, for the funeral that was held on the 31st of the 12th, 1996. That's a reasonably quick time frame, quicker than I would expect. My brother died at age 46. His body was held for 3 weeks. The family was fine with this, as they did not know why he had died, and we knew that understanding his cause of death would help us with closure. Due to the time they took, we learned that he had an undiagnosed hereditary heart condition that led to a heart attack. This information has since made us more aware of our own risks and could save our lives, so I have a hard time understanding why a family would rush the body being returned, especially in a murder case, where forensics is critical for justice, could potentially save people's lives, help with closure, and if the Ramseys are innocent, possibly help eliminate them as suspects, and lessen the financial burdens of a defense / the negative consequences from lingering suspicions. I 100% believe Lockheed Martin was a factor in this case. Why couldn't the police get phone records, financial records? That shit is standard in an investigation. Am I to believe they're going to let a situation like this derail a $200 million sale? Oh, hell no. The longer I think about it, the more I believe John was on the phone with lawyers and probably people above him from Lockheed in the wee hours of the morning to discuss what was going on. That meeting in Atlanta was probably specifically intended to address all of this. In fact, more than a spoiled social reputation, this alone could have been the driving, motivating factor to cover up an accident at the hands of Burke or Pat, though my guess is Burke, especially with the potential discovery of familial SA at the hands of an autopsy or intense hospital examination were she to live. Why does no one talk about Lockheed Martin? They were definitely involved in the post-cover-up, an investigation fuck-up, but I've never read anything about their involvement in the crime itself. Maybe John was on the phone with them when he disappeared after the non-ransom call. This is a case of the powerful and wealthy protecting its own. No one else would have received the courtesy of assumed innocence for so long. Point number 4 is the most compelling, and is the typical sinister motivation that is usually behind these things. The grand jury did indict Patsy and John, but on child endangerment and obstructing the scene. Awful indictment, sure, but still not for sexual abuse or murder. The DA not pursuing the case after the indictment is always going to be pretty fucking fishy, even if people say that's because no one wants to put a 9-year-old on a murder trial, and it's not his fault his parents didn't get hot for his behavior. Still, the grand jury is a beautiful way to seal up literally everything involved in this case. Forever, that would expose exactly what really happened, especially the things still not made public that might show tendrils were touching this case that came from outside the domestic family situation. Would Lockheed go to these measures for what? $200 million? That's how much they sold John's company for to GE. $200 million was not a lot of money for Lockheed Martin, even back in 1997. Hell, John's company just grossed $1 billion in sales for the last year, and $1 billion would still be pennies to the world's largest defense firm, and the biggest arms dealer on the planet. So I'm not really sure Lockheed Martin would care too much about the $200 million they were trying to get for the company, as much as they valued not having negative attention and press directed at them, which for LM would be worth way more than $200 million. There were also stock options involved on top of the $200 million up front, which could have been potentially worth billions, so maybe that is why. This whole thing is extremely sinister, and dear Lord, do I wish I could have access to the entire grand jury investigation that is now sealed up and locked away forever. They got more out of that deal than $200 million. They also got $2.75 billion worth of their own stocks back, which would strengthen their position against Northrop Grumman. So this was also a strategic move that could have earned them even more money had the federal government not stepped in and prevented them from buying Northrop Grumman.
From hoses to hand tools, lighting to ladders, Grainger has the right stuff right when you need it, so you can fix, build, maintain.
This isn't a super major story, but it might corroborate what goes on there. I trespassed on Skinwalker Ranch. 2021. Summer just started. Heading back west after taking a road trip.
Sorry about that. I couldn't get the video to stop. So those are the anomalies with the JonBenet Ramsey murder. And so that's what I have for you today. So piece it together and come to whatever conclusions you would like. But it's possible that Ghislaine Maxwell is entangled with this murder of JonBenet Ramsey. If she was photographed at Ramsey's pageants, then the connections are there. All right, much love and light. Take care. I hope I informed you guys with something today. Peace.